Welcome back to Joe's Diecast Garage and Other Stuff. Today, the video will be Matchbox MG1100 number 64. This was inspired by a video I saw on a fellow diecast channel. The channel name is Maple Leaf Matchbox Makeovers, and he recently restored one of these as a custom. And I got inspired to dig one of my own castings out of a box of stuff and redo mine myself. So this is part homage and part inspiration from his channel. So check his video of this casting for the technique that he's used and a little bit of a history of the MG1100. So I've already started drilling the end of the post out, and I'm just wiggling the base apart from the body. And as you can see, our blue suspension pieces are broken, and I tackle that repair later in the video in full length and description. So now I'm just drilling out the post where the windshield glass is mounted to the roof. And rather than fuss with it, because there was already a crack, a small one, in the rear portion of the glass, I use a little bit of 3-in-1 oil to get underneath there and help wiggle it out without breaking it anymore or having to drill it anymore. And it seemed to work pretty well. Interior plastic is in good shape despite some dust and some sort of bug remnant in there. And I'm just drilling the post so I can tap it for a screw. Which is the usual process that we've all seen. I'm trying to edit these videos and keep them at least at the most, that don't sound right, at the most 30 minutes. So this one came in at 29, and it would have been shorter if I hadn't shown the full repair on the plastic suspension. So that's why this is so long. So when you get there, if you wish to fast forward, by all means do. So there's our screw all ready, and body's ready to go into the jar of paint stripper. Still leaving those overnight. I'm not in a rush to do those. I don't fret over it any longer. So I wait overnight and I move on to other portions of the project. And here I'm just removing the burr from the axles so the wheels can be removed. This is Marty's method. So go to his channel and check out some of his stuff. He does mostly Matchbox. I think he does all Matchbox. I will, whatever I can get my hands on, I will try and restore or repair if I like it enough. So, repeating the process on the second set of axles. This one gave me a little bit more trouble because the burr on the end seemed to be a little more prominent and needed some extra grinding. So rather than try and tackle it all at once and maybe make a mistake and ruin a wheel, just chip away at it until the wheel comes off. This happens, you know, the first one came off very easily because the burr on the end was pretty small. So just stick with it. And I think it was I think this is it right here. Pretty sure it comes off after this last, there you go. So axles and wheels come apart. And we have our little plastic bin for our parts. And I move right into cleaning up the axles. So throw them in a drill chuck, and I will usually use anywhere from 60 grit to 220 grit, depending on the severity. In this case, these axles were pretty clean. It wasn't really rust, it was just oxidation. So I'm a big fan of 150 grit. That seems to be the go-to grit for these, unless they're really bad. So I use cordless drill and put half of the axle in, and you can actually do the end and kind of polish that a little bit while you're there with your sandpaper. Be careful that you don't hurt your fingers. So do one side, and when you put the rounded over end of the axle in, be sure not to smush it when you're closing the chuck down on it. You don't want to crimp it. There you go. 2 polished axles ready to go, and you'll see the mushroomed end is in good shape and pretty well cleaned up. So here is our Clr Dip to remove the oxidation from the base. And this is usually a game time decision to figure out how much time you want to leave it in. It's very potent. Again, that's a full mix of CLR. It's not cut with water. And as you use it, the potency decreases. So I've probably got, I don't know, half a dozen bodies or so that I've actually used in that last batch. So the severity wasn't too bad. I left that in for about 5 minutes. And what you want to do is, when you remove it from the solution, you want to stop the reaction. I don't think I've done this in other videos or explained this. So remove it from the solution and then dip it in water to stop the reaction. If you go too long, depending on the original state of the base and the metal, you could leave black marks. You could actually eat through the metal, and it will, if it's very brittle, it'll start breaking apart. You don't want to do that. So stop the reaction, and then I go to a steel bristle brush, and you pick these up at Home Depot, dollar stores, fairly cheap. And what that does is that helps the oxidation break down and bring a little luster to your base. And then from there I move on to a wire wheel on a Dremel. So it's kind of a 2-part thing. So some hand scrubbing with the stainless or the steel brush. You can also use the brass brush. And then I move on to a wire wheel on a Dremel, and always wear your safety glasses when you're doing this. I always stress it. And this these wheels seem to be a little softer than the stainless, or I don't even know if they're stainless, but the hand brushes, they seem to be a little more sturdy. The steel on these wheels seems to be a little softer, a little more forgiving, which is probably why they break off and pieces of it will fly off the wheel. But it actually adds more of a luster to what was already done with the hand brush. And I'm paying extra attention to the grill and the headlights on this casting because they're really nice and detailed. I want to make sure I clean them up pretty good. And then just take your time and get it to where you're happy. And I'm happy. That grill looks really great. The wire wheels also help with any flashing or just odd things and shapes that sometimes form in these castings, and dents and things like that. So take your time with the wire wheel. Make it happen. And then we move on to just cleaning the interior. You can see another little box next to my tape dispenser. That piece is finished too. So that one will be the next video that I post. It's an interesting, it's actually a Hot Wheels casting. So with a little paintbrush and some warm water, sometimes with soap, depending on how dirty they are, clean up the interior and the windshield and the wheels if need be, if they're really dirty. But our driver looks like he's no worse for the wear of 50-something years of existence. And I don't know how many dog years that is. It's about 350 dog years, but he looks pretty good too. So they're ready to be dipped in some future floor shine. And I actually I cut the trailer hitch off of this. I never liked the trailer hitches on any cars, and you know, I fight with it. But you can see the plastic is in the lid of that container, and the trailer hitch is cut off. So I didn't go with my fret eraser trick on this windshield because it has a crack in the rear portion, and the fret eraser, while it's rubbery and flexible, is very rigid. So I just went with 2000 grit sandpaper and wet sanded it until I was happy. I didn't want to take the chance, even though I'm sure I could have dug up another windshield from another casting. Wasn't going to take the chance. It's just more work for yourself to go find it, remove it. And despite the crack, this one was in pretty good shape. So I just used the sandpaper and took my time and made sure I got it safely to its next position before I dipped it. So I dipped the interior and the window off camera, and they are under my little plastic box on the paper towel there, just drying. And here is the wheel method, which you've seen before. Some wheels on a toothpick, get the excess rolled off on the paper towel, and then I use one of those little solo mixing cups. Actually, they're shot cups, but they mix paint well. And I use those with some holes in the side, and they keep the wheels from touching anything while they dry. You can also use styrofoam, you know, little chunks of styrofoam, things like that. This I forgot whose channel I saw this on. And since I have the mixing cups, and no need for the styrofoam. So that's all done. Those will dry. And here is my repair on the suspension piece. So I taped them down to a steel block because I'm going to use super glue. And I matched the pieces up. Just super glue or any kind of bond, epoxy or anything, if you just glued it together, it would snap. So what I'm doing is I'm using the plastic from a Hot Wheels card. And this plastic is pretty tough stuff. So what I'm trying to do is make a cleat that spans across the crack. So it will remain flexible because this plastic is flexible, although it is very tough and durable. It will remain flexible, and that's the idea because that's a suspension piece. You want the wheels to go back into their original flexy position when you put the model back together. So this cleat, I measure just enough and trim as I go. And I want the piece to just fit and span across the crack with enough meat to adhere to the good portions on either side of the split. And then I'm going to use some super glue gel. I don't want to use the liquid. I don't want it to run off anywhere. I want the glue to stay put, and then I'm going to use Bob Smith Industries activator to set the glue. That super glue I think I picked that up in Hobby Lobby. It's like 3 tubes for like $2.99. You can get the same exact brand in the dollar stores. So let that be a shopping lesson. And I happen to like that gel brand. I don't use that liquid brand, but the gel brand is pretty good. So I'm just getting enough on the piece to span both sides, and then I'm going to put this little cleat across and hold it down with a toothpick and make sure it's in the right place. It's kind of like putting a decal on. It's such a small piece of plastic, and you want to make sure you position it correctly before you hit the activator and set it permanent. So I get it in place. I push out any air or anything else underneath. And then I use like I said, the Bob Smith activator, but I don't spray it. I dip the pump in the tube. I just get a couple of drops and drop it on, and then I will go back and put some more pressure on it to make sure the activator gets in, the glue squeezes out if there's anything that was an air pocket or something that got stuck, and make sure it's in position. So it's flat, it's ready to go, and I repeat this process again in its entirety. So you can fast forward from here if you don't want to see the other side. But this is what it looks like when that cleat is done, and I show you how it remains flexible. And you want it to flex because it's kind of like having shock absorbers on the car. That's why those plastic pieces were in there. So it will remain flexible, and those car suspensions didn't flex as much as I'm bending it. So with the second piece in, it's going to reinforce it even more, and it should be as good as new. So I'm just taping the piece down on the other side, just so it doesn't move on me. And I repeat the process as soon as I remember to go and put the camera back in focus. Don't worry, this is not all blurry. I do eventually remember. But again, bothers your eyes or you just don't want to see it. Fast forward. There we go. So I'm making another cleat, sizing it to fit. I got this by, I do guitar repair also. So in fixing a soundboard on an acoustic guitar that has a split somewhere, what they do is you get the split to eventually match up by using weight or humidity to get moisture back into the deck of the body, the deck of the soundboard. Once you get the split to meet, you repair it from two sides. And on the underside, you actually reach into where the sound hole is, and you would put a wooden cleat to span the crack. So the next time the wood expands and contracts, there's something there to support it. So that's where this idea came from. Span a split and put some reinforcement on the other two sides. And it actually worked. So when I put the car back together, I did a little test and pushed on it, and the wheels flexed like they normally do. And I did not hear anything split. I did not hear anything move. So here is, I think I give you a quick shot of what it looks like when it's done, and you'll see two pieces of plastic, one on each side, and now the rigidity is back to normal pretty much. Might even be a little more rigid, but that was how I solved this issue. So I was very happy with that. I could have probably found another model and stolen it and used one from another model, another casting, but I figured this was worth a shot, and it actually did work. So we move on now to some body work. I'm a huge advocate for cleaning these castings up. I mean, we spend so much time trying to get them a certain way. Having needle files and some of those little sanding sticks and things like that. Dental picks, things that will help you scribe a line back into a body line where it was maybe it was missing, maybe the original casting didn't quite catch it, or there's flash, and you want to do some extra work on these bodies before you prime and paint, because there's nothing worse than getting done with a paint job and you think you're all done, and you are, and you just see some blemish or something that could have been tackled while the paint was off, and it was just sitting there waiting to go into your little paint booth. So this car is basically a hatchback, but it looked like it had some casting lines that made it appear like it had a trunk, and I knew that wasn't correct. So I'm taking the time to get rid of those lines that are sitting on the what would be the decklet of a trunk, but it's not really a trunk. That is a hatchback design, and I'm also trying to scribe with the edge of that file where the taillights are, that crease. I'm trying to get a little bit of that crease back in between the taillight and that body piece. So I also cleaned up there was some other flashing in one of the windows on the underside of the body, and this filing portion is in its entirety too, but you can fast forward if this doesn't interest you. But this is something I do to try and make something a little extra than what it was. And some of the beatings that these cars take after 50 years of kids playing with them. I mean, I know what I did to my cars, rolling them in the dirt and things like that when I was playing with mine as a kid. So there's also, I've seen guys go full bore on sanding a car, 2 or 3 different grits and just getting that body smooth without ruining body lines and things like that, and putting body lines back in if they did. So there's certain degrees that we will go, and this is one of the degrees I will take to try and make something appear a little bit better. If I'm going to spend the time to prime and paint it, I'm going to spend the prep time to make it look as nice as it possibly can. So now you can see I'm paying attention to some of the flashing that's in the underside of the body and just giving it a once over. And I give you a decent shot of what I was spending so much time on. And then I go ahead and use some sandpaper and knock those scratches out. I mean, it's a process, so I didn't want to bore you with the rest of it. It's just sanding and taking those scratches out and making it smooth. But the filing is important. So, as my new mantra goes, I'm not going to be spending time on showing you paint processes. So here is everything ready for reassembly, and the color I chose, be it that my friend at Maple Leaf Matchbox Makeovers chose a blue color, I also did as well. I chose Duplicolor Metallic Blue. It's actually Chevy Bahama Blue. And it's a really great color. In the sun, the metallic is ridiculous. And from a rattle can. And was very pleased. And after I painted it, I shot 2 coats of the Rust-Oleum Clear enamel. And then did a small buff job with some polish to give it some shine. And while I'm putting this window back in, it actually fit, but it did move a little bit. So I'm using, this is the first time I'm trying this. This is a product by Loctite called Power Grab. And I noticed by accident when this particular glue, this is, construction adhesive basically. And when it dries, it sticks, but it also dries rubbery-ish. It's not a full hard, like super glue, it gets hard. This stays flexible. So I know some other guys use silicone rather than super glue when they put these windshield pieces back in or window pieces back in. I figured this would definitely hold, but if need be, and somebody wanted to redo this car in 50 more years, they would be able to get this piece of plastic out without much fuss. It would just take a little stern, some force, but not enough force to where you would split it. So there's our suspension back on the underside of the body, or the interior. As you can see, the trailer hitch is cut off. Here's our nice shiny base. And that went back on without an issue. And here's our one and only screw. And for all intents and purposes, this is done, and you'll be pleased to know that I finally broke down and purchased a solar-powered rotisserie, so you will not see my funky fingers on the final display shot. And there she is, Matchbox MG1100 number 64 in Chevy Bahama Blue Metallic Duplicolor paint, and ready to give our driver and his best friend another 50 years of life in a pretty slick looking vehicle, and a little more sporty looking without that trailer hitch. And those bases, you can shoot them in clear if you wish. I just try and polish them up as best I can. I don't want to try and make it like a Trailer Queen Matchbox. And there I am testing the shocks, or suspension, and she still rolls, and the suspension passed the test. There I am pushing on it, and she sprung back. So I was very, very pleased. So she's ready for the next round of adventures. And here's my spinny rotisserie and our finished product. I wish I had gotten the lighting a little better for this, but it is what it is. And you can see some of that metallic sparkle in there. And you can see I'm shining a flashlight on there to try and give it as much of that sparkly effect. But she looks great. And I'm very pleased, and I'm very thankful to seeing that inspirational video by Maple Leaf Matchbox Makeovers. Be sure to go and look at his video on his car. And he gives you a little history of the MG. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm hoping to be doing many more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave comments. And I hope everybody is well. And I'm checking out other channels to get some more inspiration, just some other techniques, and see how guys are doing this stuff. So that's it for now, guys. I'll see you in the next one. So be good, and everybody be well. Thanks.